Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Inside of today's video, we're going to be breaking down the brand new brawler FINX'S. So FINX'S is a mythic brawler, and by the end of it, I'm going to be telling you guys whether I think he's going to be good or not. Of course, going through his best star powers, gadgets, and everything. So straight away, let's go through his basic attack. So as you can see, it's 3 projectiles. Kind of reminds me of a funny Ruffs in a way. That's probably the most similar brawler I can think of. So of course, this middle projectile is a bit thicker, so it's going to be dealing more damage. So it's going to be 900 damage with your outer projectiles, 1800 damage if you hit the middle one, then of course if you hit all 3 of them, 3600 damage, which is quite substantial. So he also has 8 range tiles. So you can see right here, if we go over to this wall, which I always like to do, it is pretty much the same as Amber, for example. So you're going to have some really good range. So he's going to be good in a lot of different maps and situations. His reload speed is 1.4 seconds. So this is pretty much exactly the same as Lola with the reload gear. And then as well, 7200 HP. I'm using the shield gear. So it's very similar to Melody. So I'd say on the little bit of the tankier side, of course, you've got no like shield gadget or anything to help you out with that. And then his super takes 9 hits to get, which I would say is actually pretty hard to cycle through. When I was playing against bots, it was pretty difficult. But let's go through his super then. So his super, it speeds your teammates' projectiles by 30%, and of course yours, and it slows the enemy projectiles by 75%. I shouldn't have killed that bot there, but I just wanted to show how fast your projectile goes. It goes so insanely fast, and you also get a self damage boost by 30% on top of that. So everything just points to me that the super is so good. Again, let's just take a look at this bot. Look how slow this projectile is. 75%. It's basically impossible for the opponent to even hit you. Like, this is crazy. Such a broken super. Honestly, so good. But let's jump through all of his gadgets and star powers. Also, his super lasts around 6 seconds. So yeah, it's not like the most long-lasting super, but there is a star power that helps that. Okay, so now we're going to be going through both gadgets, starting off with back to the FINX'S. So with this gadget, you return back to position you were in 3 seconds ago, and also return you to the amount of ammo that you had 3 seconds ago. So of course, if you do this with no ammo, you're gonna be turning back to that position with no ammo. But if you have full ammunition, so I'll show you a good example of how to use this once it recharges, because it's got a really big cooldown. Again, I'll put the cooldowns on the screen for you guys. I think it's 18 seconds if I remember correctly. But essentially, you can see this little thing on the field here. It shows you where you were 3 seconds ago. So this is really handy. So what you want to do is use 3 pieces of ammo, use your gadget, and then you've got another 3 pieces of ammo. Of course, you're not always going to be in the best position to time this correctly, but those are going to be the good plays around it. It's essentially a different version of Sneaky Sneakers with Max. It's going to be a really good gadget. Now moving on to gadget number 2, it's called No Escape. So whenever you hit anybody with your middle projectile, so not the outside projectile, so it takes a little bit of skill there, it will freeze them in time for 2 seconds, but you can't actually deal any damage to them, and of course they can't make any actions either. So I don't know how to feel about this. Of course, this can be really clutch in some situations, but then you also can't like deal damage to them either. So sometimes it can work for you, sometimes it can work against you. I've got a feeling the other gadget's going to be better, but it does definitely have some use cases. It's literally just a freeze, which is really good in some instances. But yeah, I don't know how to really feel about this one. Now moving into the first star power, it's called Hieroglyph Halt. So for 3 seconds, you reduce the reload speed of that brawler for 30%. So we're going to show the reload speed without this, of course, star power taking effect, and it's just with his main, well, just any of his projectiles, anyways, main attack. So again, so we're going to just shoot all of these shots, and then FINX'S is going to shoot you once, and just see how slow that is. And again, if he shoots you again, look how slow this is with Piper. And again, one more time, like, this is literally impossible. This is torture. How much this can reduce your ammo. Again, like, FINX'S going to be a brawler as well, but be able to chip you from distance. It's really going to hurt. Slow reloading brawlers, or just any brawler in general, you're basically going to get value out of every main attack. So I think this star power will be so good, but so underrated, because it's of course hard to see the value of it. Moving on to FINX'S second star power called Primer. So whenever your projectiles are sped up, it increases the duration of the super by 0.25 seconds. So technically you could probably get an additional, I would say maybe maximum 2-second increase in this time, which is pretty good for a star power. But again, this takes like really good timing in the fact that you've got to use your gadget with this, so you get back your maximum ammo, which again, this cooldown's not going to really play into fruition. I just don't know how to feel about this one. Like, only 0.25 seconds, so most of the time you're probably going to increase it by maybe like a second, which is still pretty good considering how good the super is. But I don't know, I feel like you just get more value as the game goes on with the first star power. So now moving on to his best build, what I predict it to be. Of course, this might change when I test it out in game, but absolutely, I think the first gadget's going to be a better one. You can avoid supers with it, you can avoid so much, and you of course get back your ammo as well. It's a better max gadget, and then this one might be good in some instances to like cancel out supers and stuff. Maybe against like tanks, this could be better. For example, if they're trying to run up against you, you can just freeze them, run away. And also, you know, like assassins when they get on top of you. In terms of star power, I think the first star power is going to be the better one overall. It's just hard to see the value with ones like this. It reminds me of Willow's star power, which reduces the reload speed, I think. Yeah. And then this one, I think it's okay. I think it might have some use cases, but you know, what if sometimes like when you pop your super, the opponents just run and wait for your super just to completely like disappear after 6 seconds? Well, this star power is useless then, so I think the first star power is going to be better. But in terms of gears, absolutely, I think the gadget cooldown is a must with FINX'S, because both gadgets have such a long cooldown, 18 seconds and 17 seconds, and then you can never really go wrong with like health or a damage, because he actually has got a lot of HP, so health gear is decent. Now we're going to be going through his good matchups. So with FINX'S, I think he's going to have quite a lot of decent matchups. He's not really going to get hard countered by a punch, and he's also just going to be decent against most things, because again, he's got 8 tower range, a lot of HP, a lot of damage when up close. So I think the really good matchups, specifically when you use your super, has to be the single shot projectile brawlers for the most part, because literally, how are they supposed to hit you if you're anywhere near your super? It slows down so quickly, you can avoid it with ease. Even multiple projectile brawlers could probably be still pretty good, because by the time it's slowed down, you can easily just back away and they can't really do anything about that. I think some tanks will be decent, mainly the tanks that have projectiles, so maybe like Brawl, Daryl, etc., because it does have a lot of HP, well, a lot of damage on HP, so you should be able to farm from those tanks. But I think other tanks could actually counter him. You all go into that in a little while. And then again, like other mid-range brawlers, so you know, when you're just going down a battle with, I don't know, like it's Sandy or something, I think for the most part he'll be able to outrange those kind of mid brawlers that are good in gem grab and hot zone. And yeah, I just think he'll be really solid overall. A lot of good matchup. Now let's move on to his best counters then. So I feel like he can counter a lot of brawlers in the game, because he's got a gadget that can waste a lot of utility. So for example, if anybody wants to use a super on him, well, he can just rewind back in time and juke that completely. But I think maps with walls are going to be his biggest issue in my opinion, because that's where you tend to see those tanks that like to hug walls. Of course, he's got okay wall peak capabilities, but he's got no way to like push back the opponents or anything like that. So I think throws as well going to be really good into FINX'S. I know that he's got like decent range and a decent amount of HP, but there's no way for him to like close the gap onto them. There's no way for him to like break walls, etc. So of course throwers are going to be pretty decent into him, you know, like Barley for example, going to be pretty good. And then lastly, I think tanks or assassins with no projectiles will be really good into him. So those brawlers that have like a slash feature, that have like a, you know, like BB for example, Mortis, Rosa, that have like punches, those are going to be really good into FINX'S. Of course, some assassins still going to be good into him like Buzz, but do bear in mind that Buzz's super is very slow with FINX'S super. So yeah, you can't really like super through, if you get what I mean. It literally slows down every projectile, so the super itself is absolutely broken. But of course it doesn't slow projectiles of those punches, so I think tanks should be able to run into him quickly enough, and there's no way for him to like escape really or push them back. So I don't think he counters tanks as well as probably people would presume. So now let's move into his game modes, and then at the end of it, we'll be talking about how strong I think he's going to be. So starting off with Gem Grab. So Gem Grab, I think he's absolutely going to be S tier here. So his main projectile is going to be so good for scouting bushes. Think a Gem 4 and double swoosh, for example. Slap on the vision gear, and it's going to be really hard to approach him. And then, of course, his super mechanic is going to be so clutch in 1 versus 1 situations. Really clutch as well for your Gem carry, for example, if there's a really tight engagement going on where you need to collect the last gem, need to collect a couple of gems. Well, that super is literally going to guarantee you that, right? So I think he absolutely has to be S tier in Gem Grab. We have Heist. I'm going to be putting him in the D tier and Heist, mainly because he hasn't got any quick damage, and he actually isn't the best at defending either. It's just kind of one of those brawlers that's just a bit meh everywhere in heists, so without a hypercharge as well, he's going to struggle. To a bounty, so I'm going to be putting him in the C/D tier here, mainly because, again, for the most part, too many of the maps are open, and even on the maps that aren't open, throws are just going to be too dominant, so he's not going to get the most value here, so like C or D tier. Moving on to Brawl, I'm going to be putting him in the A tier in Brawl. A lot of people just slap him in the S tier. I think A tier, mainly because the meta now is just very, very hypercharged brawlers that can just, I don't know, they can suck for most of the game and then they just pop a hypercharge and score. And of course, he hasn't got a hypercharge, but for the most part, he's still going to be pretty good. I still think there's too many maps with like a ton of grass and a ton of walls in the Brawl rotation, so he's not going to like that. But still, against the majority of brawlers, he's going to be able to dominate. On to Hot Zone, I think absolutely has to be S tier here, mainly because of his super. He'd probably like his super in a more open area, and literally kind of think of it as a loose super in a sense. You throw out that super, it's automatically going to just gain your control. Even if you hit nobody with the super, the opponents are just going to run away from that position, and again, it can win you 1 versus 1 fights really easily. Just absolutely S tier. Next up for Knockout, I'm going to put him in the D tier, mainly again because there's just other brawlers in the meta which are going to be better. Unless he becomes dumb broken, then he might be just a bit better in Knockout inherently because of how strong he is in other game modes. But I just still feel like when you just look at FINX'S as a brawler, those type of control brawlers aren't really the best. And again, he doesn't really like counter like tanks, for example, like Daryl and Kit. Suffers against snipers, suffers against throwers, so he's not in the knockout meta. Final game mode we're going to be taking a look at is Cleaning Duty, because of course it's in the ranked rotation for the first season. I think it's absolutely going to be S tier here, mainly because again, it's all about control and trying to stay within a certain point, kind of like a weird way of Hot Zone. So I think he's going to be really good here. Pop your super down, the opponent's going to run away, you're going to be able to collect all of the rubbish or whatever it is in the middle. So yeah, I think it's going to be really good here. So now let's talk about how strong I think he's going to be overall. I think FINX'S is going to be S tier. I don't think he's going to be like dumb broken, the best brawler in the game. I mean, he could easily be, but the reason why I say that is because there's too many brawlers in the game right now that have a hypercharge. So now when the new brawlers come in, I feel like they're going to struggle to become the best brawlers in the game unless their stats are just way overtuned. But I think because of his supercharge rate, takes 9 hits to get, which actually feels a lot slower with all things considered. It's going to literally take you, I'd say, like 5-6 pieces of ammo unless you're up close, and still up close you're not guaranteed to get all of the projectiles to hit an opponent. Yeah, I think he's going to be very dominant though. I think the super is so cool but so toxic at the same time. I find it absolutely hilarious that the opponents would just never be able to hit you. You know, sometimes they might be able to hit you though, but it's just hilarious. Such a cool concept of a brawler though. I think so much more fun than Ollie and Meeple, for example. So I think whoever worked on this brawler, they did an absolutely exceptional job. I'm going to have a lot of fun with it. But yeah, I think definitely going to be better than Meeple and Ollie for sure. So yeah, that's going to be it for today's video, guys. Hope you enjoyed this. Let me know down in the comment section below how strong you think FINX'S is going to be. Again, S tier absolutely for me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.